to assign to us our chores in life. Over here, sir, he will make you the czar of the newspaper world. He'll be the big publisher in the country. You can handle, say, the cause journals, the journals of opinion, so-called, like last century, The Nation and many others. I'll put you in charge of book publishing. We take care of the printed word here. I'll put you in charge of the churches, where the social gospel was beginning to expand. Put you in charge of the schools, from the kindergarten up through the colleges and universities. There'll be a time in the future ways when we'll have movies. We'll put you in charge of the movies. And you continue in that, and you write the scripts and direct the shows. And put you in charge of radio, another vehicle for shaping opinion, put you in charge of television. Now, you got your jobs. Over here, I'm going to put you in charge of railroads in 1850. You in charge of steel production. You're going to grow wheat out in the Dakotas. You're going to bake the bread. Harry can take care of the golf courses and stuff. The rest of you will make homes where people live and eventually automobiles or whatnot. Over here, you are manufacturing goods and services, and you are the marvel of the world. You're so good at what you do that you attract almost 1 million people a year who come here from Europe, and we put them to work in our factories and businesses and on our farms. 1 million a year for a whole generation. You're manufacturing goods and services, but you made a big mistake. You figured mistakenly that the abundance, the prosperity, and the elbow room people were enjoying in that sector of our social life would convey the message to all these people that you can't do this except in a free society where the law is properly limited. They didn't get the message, because facts do not automatically arrange themselves into theories. Over here, you are the theory class. You're working in theories. Over here, you don't manufacture goods and services. You manufacture opinion and beliefs. You shape people's thinking. You give them the ideas with which they do their thinking. So I ask you, to whom will the world belong in 100 years? It belongs to you people. You're at fault for whatever troubles we suffer from at the present time, because you have poured into the consciousness of the modern world a lot of wrong ideas. If you have wrong ideas, wrong actions follow almost inevitably. But we're correcting this. You no longer have a monopoly. I've often said that more books in this field are now being written by people I know or friends of mine than I can find time to read. We're catching up. In the battle of the books, we're gaining. Maybe we're ahead. There's no economist writing books as good or at as high a level as Ludwig von Mises and Milton Friedman, F.A. Hayek. No political philosopher to match F.A. Hayek. A lot of our young people whom we got to know when they were in college are now teaching in college, or they're working on newspapers, or they're working as White House aides or in some other branch of the bureaucracy. But we're gaining over here, and so you people too are shaping up. I'm not saying that you have, as a businessman, some direct responsibility for attempting to shape people as to the proper knowledge in economics and political science, but as a father, a husband, a scoutmaster, a little league umpire, or whatever, you wear several hats, and you do have a responsibility as citizens to work toward the ideas which are the presuppositions of a free society. Business as such is not involved in this. I defy any of you, if you read Business Week regularly, to find in that a good word for the free economy. Very, very seldom. Milton Friedman's new book was reviewed in the New York Times Book Review about 3 weeks ago, Sunday Times Book Review, by a senior editor of Business Week. And of course, Milton Friedman was panned as well as misunderstood. So, education in the broadest sense is the only way to go. And that requires many different vehicles. The other side acknowledged this. Karl Marx said that a man's thinking His philosophy, his religion is a superstructure. The basic thing from which this comes is the mode of production at a given time. Some smarter socialists said, no, get our people into the areas where ideas are being conveyed. If you convince the theory class, you've got it made. So we are now convincing another theory class with a set of, I believe, sounder theories. Yes, sir.
Can you comment a little bit on the role of government in relation to the environment or environmental issues, since that seems to be a classic case of our conflict between individuals' rights to use property as opposed to, I guess, a corporate use of the environment?
One of the major lousy prophecies I made was a prophecy I made about 20 years ago. When this environmental thing came into focus, I said, well, nobody can go too far wrong who wants to preserve the natural beauty of our planet. There is no, in all the catalog of rights, like right to life, right to liberty, right to property, there's no catalog of rights which says a man has a right to deteriorate our common environment. I had been influenced a lot by a man who was a neighbor of ours in South Hingham, the nature writer, remarkable person, Henry Beston. I had used the word ecology long before it became a popular word. As I mentioned earlier in this talk, economics is a branch of ecology, or vice versa. You do have, I think, in our time, an anti-life sentiment, a surge of anti-life sentiment, which implies that until the human being came on this planet, the world was a peachy place, and all that man has done on this planet is to deface it. He's cut down the trees, etc. Nonsense. The human being is the most meaningful representation of the creative intelligence at work in the cosmos. So when there is this mentality, anything that happens to displease someone who calls himself an environmentalist is alleged to be a violation of someone's rights. Well, the law we're talking about, which protects the life, liberty, and property of everyone, can result in a court case where it can be proved that someone has injured you in one of those ways, in your life, liberty, or property. But if someone says, well, look at all this pollution, but no one is being injured in his person or property, or his life habits impaired, then the word pollution is wrongly used in that instance. It's impossible to build a house without cutting down some trees. It's impossible to do a lot of things required for human life without doing something to the natural environment. Man is given, by his nature, domination over the surface of the planet to use its resources efficiently, non-wastefully, for his own life and his own benefit. And there will happen certain things that some people don't like. Some people would like to have farms in the middle of Manhattan, as Manhattan once had farms in the middle of Manhattan, or farms in the middle of Atlanta or whatever. But with the rise of urban life, we had to put the farms out in the country, obviously. So the changes which are natural when population increases are the things which the environmentalists so-called complain about. Not until fairly recently have there been really good answers to these questions in book form which spell these things out in great detail. A man named Tucker wrote a book about a year ago, I forget the exact title, reviewed in the Freeman magazine. So I think that the answers to the complaints of the Naderites is forthcoming in more and more detail. These people resent change. If you're a member of the Sierra Club, you resent the fact that the hoi polloi can get to these places where you and your well-to-do friends alone could enjoy them some years ago. I know what the feeling is. I like Cape Cod the way it was when I was a kid. So I resent this wide highway, the Mid-Cape Highway, which brings all kinds of crowds down from Boston to take over. I hate them damn tourists on Cape Cod. So we like things to be retained in the old way, the way we knew? Well, you have to take a grip on your nostalgia and say, these people have just as much right to enjoy the Cape as I do, or whatever. We should spend a whole weekend on environment alone, but we can't do that. But I think that if you do have the law protecting life, liberty, and property of all persons alike, the rest will take care of itself. Dick?
One of the more aggressive ecologists a number of years ago in a speech, and I think he succinctly summarized the whole philosophy when he called man the ultimate disease of nature.
Yes.
That's summarized.
Well, that's the end result of a view of man and human life which says that human, or all life, was simply the result of an accidental collocation of atoms. There was a little stirring in some primeval slime pool, and gradually this little stirring came onto the land, and by mechanical, chemical, physical interaction with a material environment, quite by chance, progressed into the various life forms we see, and eventually man appeared. All other living forms are in balance with their natural environment. Only man transcends his environment, and he can make mistakes, or he can willfully deface or destroy things. No question about it. The human being can be destructive, but we're not talking about that. The law can take care of destructive actions. We're just talking about the idea that human beings have no business on this planet. Give it back to the Indians, not to the Indians, but give it back to the animals and so on. It's an anti-life mood that's quite pervasive in our time. Yes.
I read a quote quite a few years ago, and I think there was a lot of wisdom in it. This man said that every cause, no matter how reprehensible, must have an advocate. And I don't agree with the native rights, but the debate that sprung from that certainly has some good spin-offs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hold with most of them.
No, that's caused a rethinking or a sharper thinking of the issues he raised. No question about it. I spoke at Auburn, I don't know, 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years ago. Some religious group on campus had me down for a Monday night talk, and the audience was about this size, maybe a few more. I got $125 for it. Nader spoke the next morning in the field house. Had about 4,000 kids there. He got $4,000, so we got $1 per head anyway. I was amused because Nader sounded off at the beginning of his talk against Detroit and General Motors and these terrible vehicles which are spewing noxious gases into the environment, and the audience all cheered. But of course this audience had driven up, thousands of them, in their cars. They couldn't walk from the campus to the field house, obviously. So there were thousands of cars driven by these students, all of them polluting the atmosphere, but they thought this was somebody else doing it. Detroit was doing it. Huh?
Keeping in mind that you indicated you're an old-fashioned Whig, and I infer from the tenor of your comments that you think there is a significant reaction to the arena from 1933 henceforward insofar as government increase. What do you think the ultimate of this will be, and what kind of projection in time do you place on that?
I mentioned that I was a lousy prophet in conjunction with the environmental thing. I'm better looking back than looking ahead, I guess. You can look back and you can say 1933 occurred largely because there were people like Veblen, Thorsten Veblen, writing his books, The Theory of the Leisure Class and some other books. A fellow named Herbert Crowley, C-R-O-L-Y, wrote a book called The Promise of American Life, and someone founded the New Republic for Crowley to be the editor of. Karl Marx had written at the beginning of this period that I set arbitrarily, 1850. Marx wrote a lot of books. A lot of other Marxists and non-Marxist socialists wrote a lot of books back in the last century.